Hey guys, in today's video, we will share an impressive story full of twists and turns. You will learn about the incredible journey of Caspar Hohenfels, a man who underwent near-death experiences that changed his life forever, and who received a frightening revelation about the future of humanity, with a crucial warning for the end of 2024. Stay until the end so as not to miss any details. Before we start, let us know in the comments which city you're watching and, of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more content like this. Hello, my name is Caspar Hohenfels. I'm 45 years old and I live in Heidelberg, Germany. I'm an ordinary man. I work as an accountant in a medium-sized company and I lead a pretty normal life. Well, at least that's what it looks like to anyone who sees me from the outside. The truth is that my life has been profoundly marked by experiences that most people would consider extraordinary, even impossible. Since I was a child, I have had encounters with what many would call the supernatural. But the event that really changed my life and my perception of reality happened about 5 years ago. It was a near-death experience, or NDE, as scholars call it. I have never been a religious or especially spiritual person. I have always been more inclined towards logic and numbers, which suits my profession well. But what happened to me that day challenged everything I believed I knew about life and death. I am not the author of books, nor the leader of any spiritual group. I'm just an ordinary man who had an extraordinary experience and feels the need to share it. I'm not here to convince anyone or preach some kind of absolute truth. I just want to tell you what I experienced, what I felt, and how it changed my view of the world and myself. I know that many may doubt what I am going to tell you. I would doubt it myself if I hadn't been through it. But I just ask that you listen with an open mind. My story may sound fantastic, but I can assure you that every word is true, at least as I have experienced it. It was a day like any other. I woke up early, had my usual breakfast, and went to work. I remember feeling a little tired, but nothing out of the ordinary. The office was busy, as always, with the noise of people typing, phones ringing, and hallway conversations. Around 11 a.m. I started to feel pain in my chest. At first, I thought it was just indigestion. I tried to ignore it, but the pain became stronger and stronger. I started to break out in a cold sweat and feel an unbearable pressure, as if an elephant was sitting on my chest. My colleagues realized something was wrong and called an ambulance. Everything got a little confusing after that. I remember lying on the stretcher, listening to the worried voices of the paramedics. They were saying something about heart attack and fibrillation, but I could barely understand it. The pain was overwhelming. I struggled to breathe, feeling as if each breath was my last. Fear took over me. I thought about my family, my children, all the things I still wanted to do in life. Was this how it was going to end? So sudden, so common. And then, suddenly, the pain stopped. Not gradually, but in the blink of an eye. It was as if someone had turned off a switch. The feeling of panic disappeared, replaced by a calm I had never experienced before. It was at that moment that I realized something very strange was happening. I could see myself lying on the ambulance stretcher, the paramedics working frantically over my body. But I wasn't there anymore. Or rather, I was. But not in the way I always was. It was as if I were floating above the scene, observing everything from an impossible vantage point. He could see every detail with surprising clarity. The beads of sweat on the younger paramedic's forehead, the expression of concentration on the face of the woman giving the heart massage, even the small tear in the driver's uniform. There was no fear, there was no pain, just a feeling of peace and curiosity. I knew something monumental was happening, but I couldn't feel fear or sadness. It was as if I was watching a very interesting film, only the film was about myself, and then everything changed again. As I watched the scene from the ambulance, something began to change. The reality around me began to dissolve, as if it was melting. The colors were more vivid, more intense than anything I had ever seen before. It was like I was seeing colors I didn't even know existed. And then, I saw the light. It wasn't like sunlight or light from a lamp. It was something completely different. It was as if the very essence of light had taken shape. It was white, golden, and at the same time, it seemed to contain all the colors of the universe. It was so bright it should have blinded me, but it didn't hurt to look at it. In fact, it was comforting, welcoming. The light seemed to call me, not with words, but with an irresistible attraction. I wanted to go towards it, dive into it. And that's what I did, or rather, that's what my consciousness did, since I no longer had a physical body at that moment. As I got closer to the light, I started to hear a voice. It was not a voice in the conventional sense. It was more like someone's thoughts were materializing directly in my mind. The voice was soft, gentle, and conveyed a sense of ancient wisdom. "Welcome, Caspar," said the voice. "Don't be afraid. You're safe here." I wanted to respond, to ask questions, but I found I didn't need to talk. My thoughts were immediately understood. Where am I? I thought. Am I dead? The voice laughed softly. It was not a laugh of derision, but of loving understanding. You stand on the threshold, Caspar, between what you call life and what you call death. But these terms are so limited. There is so much more than these simple definitions. I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. Joy, peace, curiosity, and a love so deep and unconditional it almost crushed me. It was as if all the love I had ever felt or received in my life was just a fraction of what I was experiencing now. You have questions, the voice continued. It's natural. Everyone has it when they first come here. But the answers you seek cannot be expressed in words. They need to be experienced, felt, lived. And then, without warning, I started seeing everything. My entire life flashed before me, not like a movie, but like I was reliving each moment simultaneously. I could feel every joy, every sadness, every decision I made. But the most surprising thing was that I could feel the impact of my actions on other people's lives, even strangers who crossed my path for a brief moment. It was overwhelming and at the same time incredibly enlightening. I realized that every action, every word, every thought had consequences that extended far beyond what I could imagine. Everything was connected in a way that my human mind could never fully comprehend. The voice spoke again. You are beginning to understand, but there is more, much more for you to learn and experience. Your journey has only just begun, Caspar. And with those words, I felt like I was about to dive into something even deeper and more transformative. As my life review faded, I found myself immersed in a new kind of experience. It was like I was diving into an ocean of knowledge and understanding. Every drop of this ocean contained insights and revelations that seemed to answer questions I didn't even know I had. I learned about the nature of reality, about how the universe works at levels that human science has not even begun to understand. I saw how everything is interconnected, how every thought and action creates ripples that ripple through the fabric of existence, affecting everything and everyone. I understood that time, as we know it, is an illusion. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously, and our souls are eternal, existing beyond the limitations of linear time. I saw my own existence stretching back and forth through multiple lives and experiences. The voice, which now seemed to be many voices in unison, continued to guide me. You are only seeing a fraction of what exists, Caspar. There are worlds within worlds, realities within realities. The universe is infinitely more vast and complex than that any human mind can conceive. I was introduced to concepts that challenged everything I believed I knew about life and death. I learned that death, as we understand it, is just a transition, a change of state. Consciousness continues, evolves, grows. But why am I seeing all this? I asked. Why me? The answer came not in words, but in a deep understanding that formed within me. It wasn't because I was special or chosen, but because we all, at some point, have the opportunity to glimpse these truths, some during a near-death experience, others through deep spiritual practices, and still others at the moment of final transition. I learned about the purpose of life, about how each existence is an opportunity for growth, learning, and evolution. I saw how the challenges and difficulties we face are actually opportunities in disguise for soul development. "Remember, Caspar," said the voice, "love is the most powerful force in the universe. It is what binds all things together, what moves existence itself. Every act of kindness, every compassionate thought, every gesture of true love has a much greater impact than you can imagine." I felt overwhelmed by this realization. It was as if every cell of my being was being filled with wisdom that was ancient and yet eternally new. I wanted to stay there forever, learning, growing, experiencing this deep connection with everything that exists. But then, gently, the voice reminded me, "Your journey on Earth is not over yet, Caspar. There is more for you to experience, more for you to learn, and most importantly, more for you to share." With those words, I felt like I was about to return. But before that happened, I received one last insight, a vision of the future that would forever change the way I see the world and my role in it. Before I could fully process everything I had learned, a new feeling came over me. It was as if I was being pulled through a tunnel of light, colors, and sensations. When everything stabilized, I realized I was observing scenes from the future. I saw the world going through drastic changes, cities transformed, technologies beyond my understanding, but I also saw immense challenges. Climate change causing extreme events, political tensions escalating into conflict, a global economic crisis looming. The voice, now more urgent, explained, "What you are seeing is a possible future, Caspar. It is not fixed. It is not set in stone. Each individual's free will constantly shapes the course of events." Then I saw something that left me deeply disturbed. It was the end of 2024 and the world seemed to be on the brink of chaos. I saw powerful groups working behind the scenes, manipulating events to create a great reset. They planned to use chaos and fear to implement a new world order, one where control and manipulation would be the norm. This can't be real, I thought, horrified by the images of suffering and disorder that flashed before me. "It's a possibility," the voice replied. "But remember, the future is not written in stone. Every action, every choice, and every thought has the power to change the course of events. Vi então uma alternativa. People coming together, choosing love over fear, compassion over division. I saw communities supporting each other, innovative solutions emerging to global problems, a shift in consciousness that could change everything." "This is the reason you are returning, Caspar," said the voice. "You have seen these possibilities. You have understood the interconnectedness of all things. Now, you have the opportunity to make a difference, to share what you have learned, to help guide the world to a better future." I felt the weight of this responsibility, but also a sense of purpose like I had never experienced before. I knew my life would never be the same after that. "Remember," the voice said one last time, "love is the key. Love has the power to transform, to heal, to unite. Never underestimate the impact an act of love can have." With those words echoing in my mind, I felt myself being pulled back. The light began to fade, and I felt a squeezing sensation, as if I was being squeezed back into a smaller, limited form. Suddenly I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It was like every nerve in my body was on fire. I heard distant, urgent voices and the rhythmic sound of machines. My eyes opened with difficulty, and the bright light momentarily blinded me. "He's back," I heard someone scream. We managed to bring him back. Little by little, my vision cleared and I saw that I was in a hospital room. Doctors and nurses moved quickly around me, checking monitors and adjusting equipment. The chest pain was still there, but it was bearable now. A nurse leaned over me, her gentle eyes watching me with concern. "Mr. Hohenfels, can you hear me? You had a heart attack, but you're stable now. You're in the hospital." I wanted to speak, to tell them everything I had seen and experienced, but my throat was dry and sore from the tube that had been removed. I could only manage a small nod. In the days that followed, I was under observation in the ICU. My family came to visit me, my wife with her eyes red from crying, my children with expressions of mixed fear and relief. I wanted to comfort them, to tell them that everything was okay, that I had seen something incredible, but the words felt inadequate. Doctors told me that I had been dead for almost 4 minutes before they were able to revive me. From their point of view, I had been very lucky. Little did they know that those 4 minutes had been an eternity for me, a journey that had changed everything. As I recovered physically, I struggled to process everything I had experienced. How could I explain something so vast, so profound, using ordinary words? How could I convey the feeling of unconditional love, the understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, the vision of the future I had been given? More than that, how could I fulfill the mission I felt I had been given? How could I, a simple middle-aged accountant, make a difference in the face of the enormous challenges that the future held? These questions tormented me as I looked out the hospital window, taking in the world outside, a world that now seemed so different, so full of potential, and yet so fragile. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I was finally released. Returning home was a surreal experience. Everything seemed the same, but at the same time, completely different. The colors seemed more vivid, the sounds clearer. Every moment, every interaction, seemed charged with a deeper meaning. My family was happy to have me back, but also worried. They noticed the change in me. I was quieter, more contemplative. I was often caught staring into space, lost in thought. I returned to work after a month of recovery. Sitting at my desk, dealing with numbers and financial reports, seemed so trivial now. It wasn't that I no longer saw value in my work, but my perspective had changed drastically. Every interaction with my colleagues, every decision I made, was now filtered through the lens of what I had experienced. I started to notice things that previously went unnoticed. The sadness in a colleague's eyes, the tension in the air during a meeting, the silent joy of someone who had just received good news. I could feel the invisible connections between people, the waves of energy that our actions and thoughts created. But this new sensitivity also brought challenges. The news of the world, wars, natural disasters, injustices now affected me deeply. I could feel the weight of collective suffering, and it was overwhelming at times. My wife, Maria, was the first to really notice how much I had changed. One night, as we were sitting on the couch after dinner, she took my hand and said, "Kaspar, what happened to you? You look different. It's like a part of you is still somewhere else." I looked into her eyes, saw the love and concern, and decided it was time to share. I told her everything, the out-of-body experience, the light, the lessons I learned, the vision of the future. I spoke for hours, the words flowing like a dammed river that finally finds an outlet. When I finished, there were tears in Maria's eyes. She hugged me tight and said, "I don't understand all of this, Kaspar, but I believe in you, and I'm here for you, no matter what." That moment of connection and acceptance was a turning point. I realized that I didn't need to carry the weight of this experience alone. That sharing, even if not everyone fully understood, was part of my path now. In the weeks and months that followed, I began to make small changes in my life. I began meditating regularly, trying to reconnect with that sense of peace and unity I had experienced. I started reading more about spirituality, quantum physics, psychology, anything that could help me better understand what I had experienced. I also started acting differently in my everyday life. I started to listen more and judge less, to be more patient, more compassionate. Small acts of kindness, a smile for a stranger, a word of encouragement for a colleague, an extra hug for my kids, have become part of my routine. Little by little, I found a new balance, a way of living in this world with our feet on the ground, but with our hearts and minds open to something bigger. And with each day that passed, the urgency of that vision of the future grew within me. I knew I needed to do more, but I still didn't know exactly how. As the months went by, I felt a growing need to share my experience with more people. not to brag or portray myself as some kind of guru, but because I felt the message I received was too important to keep. I started simply. In conversations with friends and family, when the subject allowed, I told parts of my experience. Sometimes it was met with skepticism, other times with fascination. Some people walked away, clearly uncomfortable with the topic, but others reached out, sharing their own stories of inexplicable experiences or moments of deep spiritual connection. One day, during lunch at work, I mentioned my experience to a group of colleagues. To my surprise, one of them, Thomas, later approached me privately. He told me that his sister had gone through something similar years ago and had since been involved with an NDE study group. Thomas invited me to a meeting of this group, and I accepted. It was an eye-opening experience. For the first time, I found myself surrounded by people who truly understood what I had been through. I heard incredible stories, some very similar to mine, others completely different, but all equally profound. The group encouraged me to share my story more widely. They invited me to speak at one of their events open to the public. At first, I was hesitant. I was never one to speak in public, and the idea of exposing something so personal to strangers scared me. But then I remembered the urgency I felt during my experience, the importance of spreading the message of love and connection. I decided to accept the invitation. The day of the talk arrived, and I was nervous like never before. The room was full, maybe 50 people. When I started to speak, my voice was shaking, but as I delved into my story, I felt a calm wash over me. The words flowed naturally, and I could feel the audience's attention and energy. I talked about the light, the unconditional love I felt, the lessons I learned about the interconnectedness of all things. I shared the vision of the future I received, the challenges that lay ahead, but also the hope for a better path if we chose love over fear. When I finished, there was a moment of profound silence. Then people started asking questions, sharing their own stories. I realized that my words had touched something within them, sparked a curiosity, perhaps even a memory of something they too had experienced but never fully understood. That night marked the beginning of a new phase in my life. I started to be invited to speak at other events, in support groups, even in some more progressive churches. I didn't consider myself a speaker or a leader, but just someone sharing their truth as honestly as possible. Over time, I realized it wasn't just about telling my story. It was about creating spaces where people could explore their own spiritual experiences, question their beliefs, and consider the possibility that there is more to life than what we can see and touch. And always, in every conversation, in every lecture, I emphasized the central message I had received: the power of love, the importance of compassion, and the urgent need to come together to face the challenges that lay ahead. As I approached the end of 2023, the urgency of the vision I received during my NDE became increasingly palpable. World news seemed to confirm many of the things I had seen: growing economic instability, geopolitical tensions, extreme weather events becoming more frequent. I started preparing in several ways. First, I stepped up my efforts to share the message. I created a blog where I wrote about my experience and the lessons I learned. I started making short videos for social media, talking about the importance of connection, compassion, and collective consciousness. But he knew it wasn't enough to just talk. It was necessary to act. I started getting more actively involved in community projects. I participated in local sustainability initiatives, helped organize mutual support groups in my neighborhood, and volunteered in organizations that worked with people in vulnerable situations. At home, I often talked with my family about the importance of being prepared for changes, not in an alarmist way, but in a practical and hopeful way. We started stocking up on some supplies, learning basic survival skills and first aid. We planted a small vegetable garden in the backyard and learned food preservation techniques. At work, I began subtly warning my colleagues and superiors about the possibility of economic turmoil in the near future. I suggested strategies to make the company more resilient and adaptable. Not all of my ideas were well received, but some were implemented, and I felt like I was doing my part to prepare my professional environment. But the most important preparation, I realized, was internal. I intensified my meditation practice, seeking to maintain that connection with something greater that I had experienced during my NDE. I worked to cultivate an attitude of calm and balance in the face of uncertainty. I learned to recognize the signs of fear and anxiety in myself and others, and to respond with compassion and love. I practiced the art of remaining centered and compassionate even in situations of stress or conflict. As 2024 approached, I felt a mixture of apprehension and hope. Apprehension about the challenges I knew were coming, but hope because I had seen the potential for a better future if we made the right choices. I was constantly reminded of the words I heard during my experience. The future is not written in stone. Every action, every choice, every thought has the power to change the course of events. This memory gave me strength. I knew that what was coming would not be easy, but I also knew that we were not helpless. We had the power to shape our future, to choose love over fear, unity over division, and so, as the world around me felt increasingly uncertain, I felt, paradoxically, more prepared than ever. Not because I knew exactly what would happen, but because I knew who I was and what my purpose was. I was ready to face whatever came my way, with an open heart and the conviction that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always hope for a new dawn. Now, sitting here in my office, looking out the window at the world outside, I can't help but reflect on the incredible journey that my life has been since that fateful day in the hospital. Every day is a new opportunity to put into practice what I have learned, to spread a little more light in the world. I'm not going to lie. It's hard sometimes. There are days when the news is so bleak, the challenges seem so enormous, that I feel small and powerless. There are times when I doubt, when I wonder if everything I experienced was real or just a hallucination caused by the lack of oxygen in the brain. But then, I remember the feeling of unconditional love I experienced, the clarity with which I saw the interconnectedness of all things, and my determination is renewed. I am reminded that every small act of kindness, every smile, every kind word, creates ripples of positivity that spread far beyond what we can see. I look at the calendar on my desk. There are only a few months left until the end of 2024, the period that was shown to me as a crucial turning point. I can't deny that I feel a certain apprehension. Tensions in the world have increased, as have extreme weather events. The global economy appears to be on the brink of a major crisis. But along with this apprehension, I also feel an unshakable hope. Because I have seen changes, small but significant. I see more people waking up to the need for a profound transformation in our society. I see communities coming together, people of different backgrounds and beliefs finding common ground in their desire for a better world. I don't know exactly what the future holds for us. The vision I received during my NDE was not a detailed script, but rather a warning and a call to action. What happens depends on us, on our collective choices in the coming months and years. My expectation is that we will go through challenging times. I believe we will see drastic changes in our social, economic, and political structures. There may be periods of chaos and uncertainty, but I also believe that these challenges will offer us a unique opportunity to redefine who we are as a society, to build a fairer, more compassionate, and more sustainable world. I hope to see an awakening of collective consciousness. I believe that more and more people will begin to question the status quo, to seek deeper connections, to recognize our fundamental interdependence with all beings in the planet. My role in all this: keep sharing my story, keep spreading the message of love and unity I received. Continue doing my part, no matter how small it may seem, to create a better future. And most of all, remain open, compassionate, and present, ready to help in any way you can as we navigate these turbulent times. I don't consider myself a prophet or a visionary. I'm just an ordinary man who had an extraordinary experience and feels a responsibility to share it. My hope is that by telling my story, I can inspire others to connect with their own inner wisdom, to recognize the power they have to shape the future. As I look out the window, I see the sun setting. Another day comes to an end, and tomorrow will bring new challenges and opportunities. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know that I will face whatever comes with an open heart and the certainty that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And so, I end this account of my journey so far. It is not an ending, but a new beginning. Every day is an opportunity to live the truths I have learned, to spread more light in the world. And as long as there is life, there is hope. Hope for a better tomorrow, for a world where love, compassion, and unity prevail. The future is in our hands. May we choose wisely, act with love, and walk together toward a new dawn.